and it's been approximately 168 hours since we brought you the very last edition of this program. But you're welcome to today's edition of Press Conference on City TV. My name is Duke Mensah Opoku. On Press Conference, we unpack for you matters of relevance from the national angle being discussed for you by the journalists, that is media men, media practitioners, and key actors in the public space. Tonight, well, in the course of the week, words such as budget deficit, expenditure, fiscal review, taxation, and all others like that became very common in daily usage among Ghanaians. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta went to Parliament on Thursday to present his mid-year budget review and made some projections as well as some adjustments and the announcements of some, corrections or recalibration, as they call it, of taxes, 3 of them. On Press Conference tonight, we do the discussions for you from people who really understand the issues in this sector. Again, tonight, their motto is service with integrity. But for the last 1 week, the integrity of the Ghana Police Service has come under the radar for various issues, including a policeman who took the law into his own hands and beat up a customer at a savings and loans company mercilessly. There's also the issue of 7 youth from Asawasi in the Ashanti region who were gunned down under the impression that they were suspected armed robbers. And yesterday, the policeman who was supposed to be protecting a bullion van ended up shooting into a crowd, and a stray bullet killed the bullion van driver. We discuss the issue of police brutalities tonight on Press Conference. The show is interactive via the WhatsApp line 0550585832, 0550585832. And on Twitter, the hashtag is Press Conference. On Facebook is CityTVGH. I am Duke Mensah Opoku. We'll be right back to delve into the issues after this break. You're welcome back to Press Conference on City TV. Now, let me introduce the men to help us do the discussions tonight. To my immediate left is Elvis Darko. Elvis Darko is the editor of the Finder newspaper. You're welcome, Elvis.
Thank you.
Next to him is Richard Abbey. Richard Abbey is the online editor of the Business and Financial Times. We call it BNFT for short. And then Toma Emihie is editor-in-chief of the Economy Times and consulting editor for Business Executive magazine. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the press conference.
Thank you very much.
And a special welcome to Richard, because it's your first time.
Yes.
For the others, this is the second time appearing on the show. Now, let's begin with the issues of the mid-year budget review. But we'll first take a look at some of the important things that Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta presented to members of Parliament on the floor of Parliament on Thursday.
The national health insurance of 2.5% to a straight levy of 2.5%. Mr. Speaker, we are converting the Get Fund value added tax rate of 2.5% to a straight levy of 2.5%.
So that was Ken Nana-Yaw Ofori Kuntum Kuninku-Atta. That's the full name of the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Now, we go into the discussions now. Let me begin with you, Elvis. For you, what's your understanding of what the Finance Minister attempted to do with the mid-year budget review?
Well, I think a budget is a projection of what government thinks they can raise in terms of revenue and what they think the money they will raise, they want to use it for. So for every government, once you start the year, you present your budget, as you start to spend, you want to find out whether really your revenue sources are coming as expected whilst you are spending. And if you really are not really getting the revenue to be able to spend, then you need to rationalize and begin to restructure and readjust to be able to make sure that you don't really spend beyond what you've not planned for, because then it will create a problem for you and the economy. So I think based on the projections that we started the year with a $1.4 billion deficit in revenue, there was the need to readjust the system. Where are you going to get that money from if you really want to spend? If you can't get it, then you need to cut down some expenditure. So I think with the budget, you realize that the government, with the 1.4 billion, they attempted to raise at least over 800 million from the readjustment of the taxes and addition of the new taxes. And there's also a plan to cut down expenditure by about 600 million, so that that deficit of 1.4 billion can be met, so that you don't overspend and create a problem for the economy. And with the restructuring of the VAT, I think that is where the main issues are. For the taxes for the luxury vehicles and the one for those earning 10,000 Ghana cedis and above, those are issues. Because Ghana, how many people are earning 10,000 above? I think I just read on City Online that the Deputy Minister of Finance had said that even in government workers alone, there are over 23,000 workers in the public sector who are earning over $10,000. So it means that the government has done some work to know that even the public sector, there's a number of people who they are likely to make some money from. And then looking at the luxury vehicles, I'm asking, what is a luxury vehicle? Because if you say 3.0, people have rickety vehicles there who are at 3.0. Are they also going to renew every year and pay that money on the rickety vehicle? Some of them are not even able to maintain it well as it should. So that one is something I think that maybe in the future we can look at it. It's good to tax people who are earning more. That I support. So for me, if you can afford to buy vehicle by certain engine capacity, you should pay more. You should pay something to the state. That I agree. And those who are earning 10,000 too, I support. But as to how much we are going to raise is the issue. But for the VAT, you realize that because it's the same 17.5, but because the government said that, okay, if it's NHL or Get Fund, why should a businessman receive refund on that money? So what, it is not your product that you are selling that you need to get a refund. This is a money that government instead that will want to use for a specific project. But so in the past that they think that has been,
yes, but that has been the case all
yes,
along.
but during the government and the people who looked at it think that if this is for specific purpose, then we shouldn't have a refund on it. So let's make it a straight VAT. And the arguments are already there. Those who believe that, look, looking at this, because the business are not going to get a refund, the possibility of them passing it on to the consumer is high, and therefore we may see some slight increases in the prices of some commodities. That is what it's turned out to be. But for me, the most important thing is we are growing an economy, and we need the revenue to be able to undertake all the projects we are talking about, from health to road to everywhere. We all complain every day that things are not the way we want it or expect it. Government is not a business. Government, all they do is depend on the revenues from taxes, duties, grants, and loans to be able to undertake some of this. So if we want this thing to be done, we must also be ready to pay for it. But see, the problem I have, and I think many Ghanaians have, is when you are paying all this and you hear of so much money being spent on certain things I think that are very frivolous expenditure, then it becomes very difficult. Oh, we read a lot about, look at the Auditor General's report. Look at monies that are due the state that we have refused to collect. And GRA is there. Look at monies that people are said to have spent and did not account for it. Those monies could have gone somewhere else. Why should a money company mine in this country and owe royalties for over $20-something million and not pay, and GRA sat there for all this while?
So they've been pampering this company
for
a very long time.
That is the issue. By you and I who are struggling and are on monthly salaries more, for us, there's no way we can say we are not going to pay. Before the salary comes, they are already taking out the taxes and everything from it before they give you a little money. So if a company that is to mining is into import, then if you go into the people have taken goods from customs bonded warehouses where custom officers are supposed to be supervising over hundreds of millions of Ghana cedis, and they took the goods, went and sold it. They never paid the duties. And GRA is sitting there. They had officers there. If you begin to read and hear of these things, contrast that, at the end of the day, you ask, why should this contract cost so much? Then you ask yourself, why should you continue to pay these taxes to the state? Because you are not seeing the use of these taxes well for you to admit that I want to pay more. So for me, I think that whilst the government, we all agree that we need to pay our taxes, we also expect that those in charge will also do the right thing. Make sure that these monies are spent wisely. The companies that are making billions in this country who are not paying their taxes, go after them. Don't only be punishing the few people who you know that for them, they are government workers or they are workers on the payroll of company A or B. So for those ones, you keep increasing and they are the ones who will be paying. I think that is where I think the focus should be.
Okay, Richard, let me come to you now. What's your own, understanding of what the finance minister did on Thursday? What's he trying to do with the economy with this budget review that he presented?
Well, sorry. Before the minister went to Parliament, I did a piece on what my expectations were as at that time, and quite clearly what came out was the fact that this government came into power on the back of they wanted to pursue a strong fiscal consolidation, and they also wanted growth as well, because 2016 our growth was about 2.9 or 3.3,
which they were retarded as one of the worst in 23 years.
23 years or so. So yes, they wanted to achieve fiscal consolidation, they wanted to also achieve growth, and it was a fine line they were working on. And somehow last year they had growth in excess of 8%. And fiscal consolidation was on course. But what suffered was revenue. Revenue performed poorly. They had to come back to Parliament to cut expenditure and all that, yes. And somehow, for the first 5 months of this year, revenue has underperformed again. So I was expecting the minister to come to Parliament to outline measures he thinks are going to yield the necessary revenues. And I wasn't disappointed, because I made a prediction and I had it right. But for me, what I would say, yes, there were speculations that VAT was going to go up. Yes, I mean, for everybody, it was like the lowest hanging fruit, because anytime government needs ready cash, I mean, just go to VAT and it's almost assured. But because of the backlash, people were so much against it, because, I mean, already businesses were not really up and doing, because you look at non-oil revenue, it's still not where every year, let's say for the past 2 years, it's performed below target. So really businesses are not out of the woods yet. So when you increase VAT, you are going to make the business environment a bit unconducive, especially knowing that we are operating within the ECOWAS space, where you have businesses having to choose whether to operate either in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, or Togo, any of our neighboring countries. So when you decide to make the environment a bit tough, people have choices. I mean, investors would
look at where they will have
exactly
ease of doing business.
Yeah, so
it's better.
So I think that it was a clever thing, was a smart thing that the finance minister did. But it comes back to the same point. You have changed the computation, how the VAT is computed. You've changed it in a way. But where will the burden fall? Okay. You get it? So you may think that because you're not changing the VAT from the 17.5 to 20 or whatever was rumored, you are kind of being smart. But at the end of the day, when businesses decide to push the burden onto the final consumer, it's almost like the same thing. So, I mean, really, it comes back to the same point people were making, speculating that VAT would go up, because at the end of the day, people will have to pay more. And for me, let me add to what Elvis was saying about the frivolous expenditure and all those things. I don't think some of them are even frivolous. I think that we are not getting it doesn't make economic sense. Let's take for instance, I know this is very controversial, but I mean, I think it has to be said anyhow. Teacher training allowance and nursing training allowance. I mean, it was a campaign promise. But really, what are we getting for those monies we are paying? In the budget, what was read, we are going to spend more than close to 500 million Ghana cedis on these two
Training
alone
allowances.
for a year. And you see, look, businesses want money. You know, we have people who have completed schools, they have wonderful ideas, and they need money. Look, assuming we should even invest half of these monies into them, give or take the next 5 years or 10 years, we are going to get value for money. We are going to pay teacher training allowance, nursing training allowance, and it will go down the drain. Do you get it? What are we going to get from these monies as an investment? And somehow we seem to run unfortunately, the economy on the back of campaign promises. Sometimes it doesn't make sense.
But on that this year, about the money from the teacher training allowances and that of the nursing training allowances were sort of recouped from or taken from the NHIS fund and then from the GET fund. Those two areas. It's something that the minority was complaining about.
And for me, I think it's sad because, look, we need to plan this economy looking at the next 10 years. What plan do we have? We talk about debt sustainability and all those beautiful things, but what about investment? What are we seeking to achieve? Look, we are still paying nursing training allowance, teacher training allowance. As I'm talking to you now, there are people who have finished nursing training school
Now yet to
and
receive
they are yet to receive their allowance, or they are yet to be posted. So what's the point? Why are you paying
financial clearance? Yes.
You see, I think that sometimes we need to decouple politics from prudent economic management. I mean, sorry, it has to be said. The fact that somebody did it and we came to, because we wanted to score political capital, you restored it. Yes, but what are we going, what's the end point? What's the end game we are seeking to achieve? So I think that some of these things, it's about time that as a country, we all need to sit down and look at the future. Look, what do we want to achieve with some of these measures we are taking now? Some of them, look, talk about NAPCO, for instance. Yes, it's a beautiful plan, but I'm here to see, so what's the economic value? So we are going to spend so much on these people. What are they coming to add? Are we doing it because people are jobless, or we are doing it because we've seen some gaps that once we employ these people, they will come on board and they would use some returns.
But there's a teaching deficit. We need more people. So more teachers in the classroom.
So if you need more
then
teachers, why do you cap teacher training allowance, teacher training
quota?
Give them a quota
for admissions.
For admissions, you can open it up. Those who can afford will go. And I can tell you,
trying to formalize the economy. These are people who are going to help government with that agenda.
These monies, so let's say for instance, these monies we are talking about for allowance, look, we can use it to even change the system. Look, go to Singapore, go to other countries. The way they even teach teachers nowadays, look, others are running. And we are still doing things like the way we did in Gold Coast. Look, we're not going to catch up with anybody.
Okay, another Gold Coast note. Let me move to Toma now. Toma, walking the tightrope of economic prudence as against doing the big campaign things. So that's that government's dilemma.
Okay, now here's the thing. What the finance minister did with taxes, basically in the mid-year review, was a pragmatic thing. All right, government has looked at its expenditures and its revenues first 5 months of the year, and I've seen that if you continue the same way up to the end of the year, you have a fiscal deficit of 4.9% instead of 4.5%. And please, let us be very clear on the importance of keeping to that 4.5%. That 4.5% is on cash basis. There's something which government has not exactly come out very clearly. So on commitment basis, the deficit for this year is supposed to be 6.4%. There's another 1.9% which you're not talking about, which goes into resolving the financial sector crisis. For example, the bonds issued by government on behalf of GCB. If you add that, the whole deficit will come to 6.4% on commitment basis. Now, so on a cash basis, keeping that 4.5% is very necessary. Yes, going for increasing VAT, because effectively what has happened, changing from ad valorem to specific, is effectively an increase. There's no two ways about it. It's a low-lying fruit, but in the short term, I think it was the immediate thing they could do. Okay, happily enough, they have recognized the fact that over the longer term, there are other things that need to be done. The tax regime for free zones, the exemption regime, transfer pricing, and the one which is surprisingly didn't talk about, which everybody else in the private sector, it's all about property taxes. These are issues which I think government has recognized they need to work on, but the tax administration aspects of those things are a bit complicated. It's not something that can be done overnight. And here's the government that needs to resolve its problems between now and December 31st. So they have to go for the low-lying fruits. If you look at those taxes themselves, the immediate tax things they've done, changing from advert to specific for Get Fund and NHIL was a smart thing to do, because it looks on the face of it as if the tax rates have not changed, but effectively they have actually increased. And that's where government is hoping to get a lot of its money from. The taxes on vehicles of 3.0 liters above makes sense to me, because a lot of people tend to go and buy old 4x4s, and those are the ones that consume the most petrol.
Yeah. And the emissions as well.
Exactly. And the CO2 emissions are very, very high. So if you decide that because you want to be seen to be driving a luxury car that you can't really afford, you go and buy one that's 20 years old and pollutes the atmosphere and consume a lot of petrol, yeah, you should be taxed on it. Every time you renew, you pay. As for the 10,000, the new tax ban for pets, I totally support that. Let's face it, since Ghana has gone free market, the gap, the income inequality gap has continued to rise and rise and rise and rise and rise. So those who are paying the most, who are earning the most, should be taxed extra. There are lots and lots of. I mean, look at you said just. Elvis just pointed out that in government, you say what are
30,000.
Now go to the oil and gas, go to the private sector, oil and gas, financial services, telcos. By the time you add on those, lots of people are now earning large. Meanwhile, the poorest 30% of the Ghanaian populace is poorer in real terms than they were 10, 20 years ago. So yes, it's a way of transferring money from the rich to the poor. I totally support that. Okay. So on the face of it, well and good. Let me tell you why I have a problem. I think both Elvis and Richard have pointed this thing out. The basic economic game plan this government came with was this. You cut what you call the nuisance taxes. Use that to stimulate greater economic activity. Economic activity now grows. So even at lower tax rates, you earn more tax revenue. Very nice idea. The only thing they forgot was that the transmission lag between when you announce tax cuts and when investment decisions are made on those tax cuts and economic activity boots up. It takes 2 to 3 years, really. But
for that to
set in. Yeah, exactly. So you couldn't expect it to happen immediately.
Wow.
But beyond that, the issue is that now you've cut the taxes, okay? But you've come up with very, very good plans to grow the economy. The Marshall Plan for Agriculture, one district, one factory, all those things. I mean, if you can implement them properly, they're very, very, very good ideas.
And they sort of gave some sort of, let's say a status report on how these flagship government programs were going in the media.
Exactly. And you notice the investor confidence immediately rose. Within how many months of the government coming to power announcing these things? I mean, look at the controversial $2.25 billion bond thing. Look at how our bond was oversubscribed at very low rates. It has engendered confidence in the economy. But the fact is that what's happening on the ground is that, unfortunately, as my two colleagues have pointed out, the electoral promises in terms of social interventions are crowding out expenditure on the things that are supposed to grow the economy. And if you don't grow the economy, how does your tax base grow on a sustainable basis? All right? Free senior high school, the resumption of teacher training and nursing training allowances, those things are not going to increase your tax revenue in any way whatsoever. They're not going to grow your economy in any way. In fact, you will claim that, okay, fine, you're using it to grow the human resource base of the country. But right now, we know that the size of the economy cannot even absorb the human resource base that currently exists. People come out of school every year, they don't get jobs. Even the nurses you are now giving free allowances for, you cannot even post them when they finish their training, because you can't afford to pay their salaries. All right. So that's where I have an issue. My issue is that we should not allow social interventions to crowd out the very, very good ideas we have to grow the economy. Because if you continue to do that, you keep on underperforming in terms of your tax revenues, and every year you have to come halfway through the year to come and revise your budget in terms of cutting expenditure and increasing. In terms of cutting your expenditure and looking for new revenue measures. There's one very important thing. There's one very important thing I watched for what the minister said.
Okay.
CapEx, capital expenditure for 2018. For the first 5 months of the year was 13.1% of the target for the entire year. Yeah. And the minister is telling us that is even a better performance than 2017, which means that in 2017, at this stage, we are even further behind target.
You know, he mentioned in the budget that last year capital expenditure fell by 1.8%. Do you get it? So it means that what we plan on
capital expenditure, we are talking about the fiscal things, roads,
hospitals,
things,
and that's what grows the economy.
That's what grows the economy. So I mean, if we continue to allow things that do not impact on the economy in a significant way to crowd out things like capital expenditure, really, we are not going anywhere.
Okay, so on that note, we'll take a break and we'll be back to look at the politics of the issue. Really, is it just a backdoor introduction or a backdoor increase of VAT, as the minority is saying? And why would a political party that believes in the ideals of center-right politics, that's trickle-down economics, be taxing the rich to pay for social intervention programs for the poor? This press conference, we'll be right back.
Tune in to The Point of View, Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. as Bernard Avle takes the news further. He will bring the right guests, ask them the relevant questions, and get you the real insights you need on the big stories for the day. The Point of View with Bernard Avle, Monday and Wednesday nights, only on City TV.
You're in tune to the Breakfast Daily on City TV. Stonebwoy says so. Keep it locked. Don't log off.
We spice up your mornings with culturally enriched conversations, social interviews, and policy-oriented discussions that will keep you updated on the progress of the nation.
And that is the reason I was making the point to him that I refrained from responding to this Joyce Bauer statement. Because if some citizens have accused President Mahama of diverting a certain amount of money, deal with that, deny him, and move on with your life.
Join the Breakfast Daily team Monday through Fridays from 7:30 a.m. to 10. Let your voice be heard with the hashtag Breakfast Daily. Join us for breakfast daily, only on City TV.
Welcome back to press conference on City TV. Before we went on that break, we were looking at the mid-year budget review and the fallout from that all-important aspect of governance, which has now been legislated by the Public Financial Management Act, and it was mandatory that the finance minister comes to prepare a mid-year review, presents it to Parliament by July 31st. We'll go back to that issue a little while before we move on to the next issue for discussion. Now, Elvis, government has done this presentation. But of course, in a democracy like ours, we have divergent views. The minority thinks that this is, the government calls it a recalibration, but the minority says it's a backdoor introduction of the VAT, or I mean the VAT has gone up. Who is telling us the truth, if I should put it that way?
Well, as we have all agreed here, the VAT, by making it a flat rate, means that people are going to pay more. That's what, there's no doubt about it. But when we said VAT, we know what VAT means. It's an ad valorem tax. But as we speak now, we have brought it, we kept it at the 12.5%. But we can say that the tax rate have gone up, not necessarily because VAT has gone to 18 or 19 or 20%, but because we've made 5% of it now as a flat rate tax instead of ad valorem. Which means that for the 5%, the businesses can no longer claim credit for it, which will, at the end of the day, they may pass on to you and I, who are the consumers. Which means that you and I will now be paying a little bit more than we are already paying for the products from these institutions. So that one, I think that we are settled on that. And if the minority that is talking, when they were in power, what did they do? Was it not the same thing that they've done? We should be shifting the paradigms. I'm expecting minority to come and say, look, this is the way it should have been done. I think that we just, in a country where everybody would, you said divergent views, but are we proposing the kind of solutions that will fix the problem? If we are not proposing the solution that will fix the problem, then we are going nowhere, because we'll be going the same solution and coming back. I read, when we went the last IMF, I was read that since we became independent country, we've been to Britain's institutions for 16 times.
Out of the 60 years?
Yes, out of the 60 years. And anytime we go, they correct us, we come back and we go back to the same situation.
But really, the Bretton Woods institutions, they just give the same prescriptions.
Yes, but if they say do this, and you have done it, and you're out of the program, so now I'm out of the program, so now I can spend anyhow. How do you expect to happen? Look, communication service staff, where do you spend the money? We say we're doing youth employment. What happened to the project? The monies were misused. Look at the amount of money that we paid in communication service tax. If the government has said that money, because it's coming from telecom sector, let's invest this money purely in young people who are into IT areas, who want to develop and write programs, so that we know that it's coming from IT. So let's develop the IT. Maybe the whole of West Africa or Africa now would have been one of the leading countries who are into IT. And look, this idea of depending on oil, gold, and the truth of the matter is that it is just a waste of time. 10 years ago, when they talk about the 10 best companies in the world, they are all in the oil sector. Today, if you are looking for the 10 best companies in the world, they are all in the IT sector. So if you are building an economy and you are not looking at the areas that are the clear growth poles, and you are just thinking about things that you think that will give you your next vote, then we'll just be implementing programs for the next vote, and we'll be where we are. As we speak, we are talking about free SHS. Now, government says that the numbers that are coming to school in September, the facilities there cannot accommodate them. Because if they have to provide the facility, they need at least 1.3 billion. I was just reading the document. That's what I'm using for my score. 1.3 billion cedis to provide the infrastructure to be able to.
So there's
and even if the money is there, they cannot even finish the project. So now they have to do a double intake. The double intake is bringing additional cost over 235 million Ghana cedis for the additional intake. Why is it that somebody's child is in school, is being fed, is in boarding, government is paying for the fees, another person's child is working from school? Why don't we make everybody a day student? If you want to be a boarder, the parents should pay for it, so that you know that the free SHS affects every student at the secondary, but only for the fees that will cover every day student. But now you are paying for a rich man's son who is sleeping at Adisada or Achimota or Wege, and you are feeding that child. You are paying the child's school fees. You are paying the child's electricity bills. Yet another man's son is now walking to school every day and back. And that one, the expenditure I'm making on that person is just about 25% or 30% of what you are spending on the student in boarding. So what kind of policy is this? Me, I will advocate that we do it there for everybody for free. If you want your child to go to boarding, pay for the boarding facility, so the free SHS affect everybody with
that would mean a total reconfiguration of the educational system. Most of our schools are boarding schools.
My brother, do we need, see, that is what I'm saying. If you do the same thing, you get the same result. If you want a different result, you should do things differently. What are we doing differently to get the different result?
Someone would also argue that, well, the oil resources from which mostly the free SHS is being paid for belongs to all of us.
It belongs to all of us. Can't we use it for something else that will grow the economy? And you are not talking about investment. You agree about
investing in the human resource.
And the person comes down. NAPCO has almost 150,000 people who said they have finished, they have a degree or a diploma, have finished their national service, yes, have no job. Now you want to recruit them into NAPCO. So now we have the figure. Let's say you pick the 100,000 today. 3 years time, they are out. Which companies are going to absorb them? When we are not growing the private sector the way it should grow to absorb the people. If I'm being paid a good salary, I don't need any freebies from government. Who in the 10,000 Ghana cedi salary bracket will say that I can't pay my child's school fees and I need government to pay? So we should be looking at growing the private sector that will employ everybody, pay good salaries to the people, that the people can take care of their needs. And the government will be out of this business of providing social infrastructure every day. Because see, we think that government is being run like an NGO in this country and many countries in Africa. Government is a business. Government should run, if not profit, at least break even. But for us, our government are already running on deficit 24/7. So if you are running on deficit 24, where do you go? So see, we should begin to look at how we can use the power of government purchases to support the private sector to grow. As I said, if we had used the communication service tax to say it's coming from Teleco, so let's develop the ICT center, young people with good brains. Let's become the best in West Africa in terms of ICT, writing programs, software, and everything. We will not do it. Then we take government money and go and buy some fake software from somewhere. Millions of dollars is coming, they don't even function. So you see, all these things, if we don't develop a culture that says that, look, we are developing private sector to become the clear, strong employment agency. Government can employ, as we are saying, there are nurses at home. There are teachers who are home who can't get it. Why? Because government look at the fact that if I bring them on board, the wage bill is going up this way. And look at the amount we are told that the wage bill consumes in this country.
And yet you are spending money to change them.
And
when you won't be able to employ them when they feel the training.
So let's
Duke, Richard, I was privileged to be in Singapore. I think a week or two ago. I was a guest of the Singaporean government, and we interacted with a number of public officials. So I spoke to, was it the Foreign Affairs Minister or Ministry of Trade, one of them, and I mentioned the issue of budget deficit. And it was
alien to them.
What is budget deficit? It's something they've not even heard of before, because they've
no surplus.
Budget surplus. Yes. And every time they keep on making their sovereign wealth fund over $10 billion per annum. $10 billion on interest from their investment. $10 billion. What's the size of our economy again?
Our economy is about 40 billion.
40 billion.
Our economy is just about 40 billion.
So you should tell, look, one of the things they do is they recognize they don't have any natural resources. So they've invested in their people. So you speak to public officials, I mean people, public sector workers, and they tell you that, look, everybody has a fund to further their education or go and improve on their skills every year. So if you are working as an accountant, you identify a particular course, every year you have to go and polish up what you are doing.
The government runs a free SHS scheme.
What they do is, look, it's not, it doesn't cut across everybody. There are those who are rich and they can afford. So if you are going, so they know every household, your income level. So if you are going, depending on your income level, they can give you, let's say 70%, 30%, because they know what you can afford. But here is the case that, look, people are earning, I know people earning $40,000 per month. And if your child happens to go to any A-list school,
because it's still free.
Sometimes they would want to pay themselves, but the government says, look, I will pay for you.
I made it free.
I mean, it doesn't really make sense. Look, if money here is a scarce commodity, it's a scarce resource. So what do we have to do? If you're going to run subsidy, you target at those who need it. If, let's say, the whole of Adamaraka, or you identify that malnutrition is a problem in Adamaraka, you know there are people who can buy food. You come and say, okay, everybody don't go and buy food. I will give you food free of charge. Meanwhile, people have their money, they want to buy their own food, but yet you say you want to give them food free of charge. Doesn't really make sense. Look, free SHS is fantastic. Nobody is, but we should, I think that because we don't have the money that we want to implement it, why don't we use it to make it better for those who cannot afford and allow those who can afford to pay for it?
Okay. To your closing thoughts on the media budget.
Yeah, now let me say this is something that's very important. Part of the problem every government in this country faces is this: the opposition. An opposition is supposed to point out where government is doing wrong and make suggestions about where they can do better. Yes. Unfortunately, in this country, because of our desperate need for power, any opposition, I'm referring to both MPP and NDC, their opposition is simply based on discrediting whoever is in power. So you have a situation, let me, for example now, even if we keep talking about this free senior high school thing and why they should restructure it, this government will never do it, because they know that the people in opposition will use it to totally discredit them.
That they have not implemented it.
I'll give you two simple examples of, and this thing works both ways.
But even during the first year when they were rolling it out, the critique was that you said you provide free SHS
for everyone.
So blanket free SHS from first year to third year.
But the people criticize, these people criticize knew that it's not the best way to go. I mean, when they were talking about progressive free, now that somebody else has come with free senior high school, instead of them to be talking about, you see, we told you this thing won't work, you can't do it, adjust it. Instead, it's all about, you see, so you have failed the people, which now makes the government all the more determined to prove that they have not failed the people, which is pushing them further into the trouble. Let me just give you two simple examples of how the way opposition in government works. This mid-year review, the finance minister was talking about how they've used 750 million from the Eurobond, this recent Eurobond, to refinance the 2016 Eurobond, which matures in 2022,
2 years.
Which is at a rate of 9.25%. Okay, they have now refinanced it using the cheaper money they got from the latest Eurobond, which was between 7.625 and 8.625%. All right, and they have refinanced something of a much higher cost. Now, that by any standard is a good thing. It lowers our financing cost. It extends the tenure of that aspect of the public debt. But what does the opposition say? What the opposition says that, you see how we are borrowing money, we are borrowing at a faster rate than ever before. They know that's not true, but they're just looking way to discredit. In other words, what they are now saying is that where it is clear to any economist, including their own economists, that the government has done the right thing,
no, but they are looking for way to say it's bad. When they were in government, the opposition,
that's what I'm coming to. Exactly, they are doing exactly what NPP did to them.
Yes.
They did exactly what NPP did to them in 2015. Go and check the figures. The 1 billion Eurobond issuance we did in 2015, every single cent went into refinancing. If you look at the central bank, statistics, the month that Eurobond was done, our external debt did not go up at all, because what we took was used to refinance existing debt. That same month, come and see the way NPP at that time in opposition was going on about how we are going to go and borrow another extra 1 billion. I mean, these people know the truth, but because they want to discredit the government in power, they distort and twist. It now makes it difficult for the government in power to do the right thing. Because anytime they try to do the right thing, the opposition is looking for ways to discredit they're doing the right thing. And because unfortunately we don't have a particularly informed electorate, it's very easy to deceive the electorate. And any government in power knows
especially
it.
when it comes to issues of economics, even
exactly. So any government in power is now forced to go by populist things that can be different rather than the right thing, because whoever is in opposition, we discredit them for doing the right thing, even when the opposition knows they are doing the right thing, because it's all about making the other side to look bad in view of getting votes. And I don't think that is the way an opposition in any country operates. As long as we have this kind of structure, any government in power will always have problems, will always take less than optimal decisions based on how the opposition will present it to the electorate and make them look bad before the next election. We have to change this.
Before you go, the ruling government in Singapore, and I think there's PAP. Yes, there's an election next year or so. Yeah. And you know what they've promised? They've said when they win power, they will increase the goods and services tax. When they win power,
increment of tax is a campaign promise.
Yes.
You see, so it tells you the sort of things they think about. They are looking into the future. And this is what they've presented to the populace. Look, if I win power, I'm going to increase it. So, but here, people will tell you, I'm coming to reduce it. And when they come and increase it, because we don't really
now they want to increase it because the people understand that when
exactly
that is happening,
my point.
This is how the economy will. That's why I'm saying that
instead
of focusing on the free things, focus on the things that build the economy. You see, cocoa price will go down, gold will go down. So your dependence on these raw materials, because you have them for your revenue, the very moment they go down, your entire economy, everything is down. But if you are adding value and industries are running, Germany did not suffer from the financial crisis because Germany is basically like a workshop that is producing and exporting 24/7. So when the whole world was crying in terms of Europe in the financial crisis, German economy was still strong. If we want our economy to be strong, it is not about import. It's not about selling. It's about looking at how we can build a light industrial base that most of the things we are producing here will produce and consume. Not dependent. If we don't consume what we produce, we are going nowhere. You are getting a job in somebody's economy, sitting and a full job. How do you tell me that you want a job in Ghana?
One factory is far more important than free senior high school.
How do we do it?
Okay, so we'll move from the economy to security. I'm sure the conversation about free SHS, government social intervention policies, crowding out capital expenditure and things that will make the country go, it will continue for a while. So sometime later we'll come back to this issue in subsequent weeks. But let's move from the economy to security. The Ghana Police Service, it used to be the Ghana Police Force. It changed the Ghana Police Service. But they are back in the news for issues of police brutality. Let's take a look at this report by Loretta Tima from Asawase, where the youth went on a rampage over some 7 people who the police here suspected armed robbers were gunned down.
Youth from the Asawase Zongo community thronged the Kumasi Central Mosque to register their displeasure over the killing of 7 people in a supposed gun battle with police at Manson Kwanta on Tuesday. Holding up placards calling for justice for the lives of their brothers, the youth say this is not the first time the police have killed people in the community. The furious youth burned car tires in the middle of the road, blocking all roads leading to and from the Central Mosque. They pelted stones at some armed police personnel who came to the scene, led by the Meshia Divisional Police Commander ACP Kwekubwa, amidst gunshots. While this was going on, another section of the agitated youth was also setting ablaze a tricycle popularly known as Mahama Kambu after failed attempts to burn down the police station. One of the officers who spoke to me off record said the facility was saved by rounds of warning shots he fired. He said the personnel had to immediately rely on fire extinguishers from a nearby mechanic shop to quench the fire. Some of the agitated youth spoke to City News. Calm has finally returned to the community now following police coup military reinforcement. However, the Ashanti Regional Chief Imam Sheikh Abdul Mumin Harun has also intervened, calling for calm.
FM stations in India. Oman come say no. And I wait my cover. I hear me as you will be as Munya Open. I say me baby actually
Roads to and from the police station have been blocked with heavily composed joint military presence. Shops have also been closed as traders flee for their dear lives.
Now, we're talking about peace in Dagmar and in Savelugu. We have also to think about peace in our nation. Recently, events have occurred at the instigation of the police that disturbed the peace of our country. I've already spoken about what took place at the Midland Loans and Savings Bank in East Legon in Accra. The other day, too, a tragedy occurred in Asawase. We're establishing a committee of inquiry to look into those events and make recommendations as to the way forward. I want to assure the country that the recommendations that will come from the committee will be ones that will be scrupulously implemented and enforced by the government to make sure that incidents like that never happen again.
So President Nana Akufo-Addo with his comments on the recent spate of police brutality. We'll take a break and we'll be back to discuss this matter.
regular news checks as they unfold. 2020 news, all day, all the time. Politics, sports, entertainment, business, and more. 2020 news. We bring you the world in 20 minutes.
And that's all the news in 20 minutes.
Welcome back. This is Press Conference on CTTV. I'm Duke Mensokoko. Let's go straight into the discussion. Elvis. So this week we've heard about Asawasi and the Ashanti region, the Midland Savings incident in East Legon, and then just yesterday, Somanya. Police brutality. How do we deal with this?
Well, I hold the view that whilst the police have tips that there's an internal disciplinary body, I believe strongly we need an external independent body that oversees the work of the police service and all security agencies in this country. I believe that until we have that body that can discipline these people, this kind of behavior will continue. And I will have to say that this is widespread in Ghana. It's only that because we don't have the opportunity to know that these things are happening. And these days, because of technology, people are able to take pictures or video some of these things. That's how we are getting to know some of them. But the truth of the matter is that these things have been happening in Ghana for a long time. And the reason being that all the institutions protect their own by saying that we have our internal disciplinary measures. Police officers misbehave, they suspend them 2-3 months. The next moment, they are transferred them to faraway place and they are still working in the system.
No, they can
that is the point, because some of them have godfathers in the system that are protecting them. So if we have an external body that is not part of the services, that will sit on these cases and deal with them, I think that will begin to have better results. Others have argued that, SHRITE is to deal with all human rights. But I think that the mandate of SHRITE is too big. That for the security agencies in this country, we need to set aside an independent body that issues like this, they will sit on it and punish these people. And I think when they begin to do some of these things, the institution will be forced to reform. But until we get to that place, the peace and all bodies in this institution will continue to protect their own.
Richard.
Well, I think that for me, it's very emotional that you lose a family member in that manner, and on top of it, to add insult to injury, they'll be accused of being armed robbers. I mean, how more cruel, or how cruel can you be? Look, I've seen people. I've heard so many stories. Every time somebody is killed, either they were armed robbers, and next thing you know, somebody would come up with some gun somewhere. And it's become an all too familiar story, and we need to go beyond that.
And City FM has been doing the count. City FM and City TV, we've been doing the count since from December 2017 up until this month. There have been about 22 incidents. There's an infograph to that effect. Yes.
So Duke, what makes someone an armed robber? First of all, if you said they are...
so when you're shot, is that infograph. 22 people shot dead by police from December 2017 to July 2018.
Look, and these are what was recorded in the media.
Yeah. What about the cases
that go unreported? So what we have to do is, look, for me, we are in the 21st century. I don't see how policing in this country has changed. We've seen a lot of technology. What has changed for you? Because we still police ourselves like we're doing in the colonial times.
They're using drones now.
Drones to do what? Look, I can mention a number of high-profile cases in this country, murder cases, that have gone, that they have not been able to resolve it. Yeah. We have a lot of forensic technology and all those things, but we are still doing things. Anyway, let's keep that one at that. But what we have to do now is, so we have to look at total reform. So people are talking about body cameras and all those things. You talk about engaging people in a shootout. At least there should be some evidence. If someone is an armed robber, come up with 1 or 2 cases. Oh, this guy was involved in this particular case, A, B, C, D. But you can't just go and shoot somebody and say they are an armed robber. Meanwhile, you have no track record of the person. You've not caught the person before. I mean, on what basis? And as for these things of finding guns and all those things, look, elsewhere, if a gun is found, you can even check for the fingerprint of the guns and all those things. You can't just go put a gun somewhere. But what are we doing in this country? I mean, just kill people and come and say they're armed robbers because we think that the anger... Look, people are going to do mob justice, but we don't expect our police to also engage in that kind of instant justice. So, because somebody does something, look at what happened at the Midland Savings and Loans. Look, if it wasn't caught on video, and something probably
obviously happened to.
I mean, how would we believe that this is
the
what
woman
happened?
would have been blamed for causing.
Exactly. So I think that we need to have total reforms, and we need to look at. I mean, who are those? What's the qualification for entering the police service? I mean, look at all those things and have a total conversation about how these things should go.
Okay, Thomas, you're having the last word on this.
I totally agree with like what Elvis says. The biggest problem here is this idea of people looking after their own. You know, you have a situation where at every turn, when there's misbehavior by a police officer, on an institutional basis, the people at the top try to cover up for whoever has done this. You will find that, if not like for this case of this Midland Savings and Loans, for example, if it had not been caught on tape, all that will happen is that person will be transferred to go and guard another bank somewhere. Given it will suspend the person for 2 weeks, we pay. Then 2 weeks later, he's working somewhere else. Case closed. That is that. Unfortunately, the internal affairs system doesn't seem to be working because internal affairs is actually working. It actually sees itself as a way of, as a clearinghouse for misdemeanors by the people that are supposed to be watching, and we need to find a way to get around this and change this, where people who misbehave can be found culpable. You see that your infogram you've just published. Have you tracked what has happened to the people who have cases against them? I'm sure if you go and trace whatever, you will find that none of them have had anything beyond a slap on the wrist for whatever they have done. And that's how the system seems to work. And until we can change that, until until a police officer who misbehaves in this open manner goes through a proper trial, and if guilty, is found guilty, and is sentenced according to the law, until we can get to that stage, these things will continue to happen.
But the PIPs are dismissed several officers who they found guilty of certain crimes. But the point is, some of us are not satisfied at the level
they should prosecute.
This small, yes, that's the point. They are dismissed and they go scot free.
Yeah, especially for this Midlands issue.
In terms of this one,
people are expecting after, even if he is going to be sacked, there should be prosecution because assault is a criminal offense. Yes.
And the staff who were in the building at that time must
should also bear some.
Be prosecuted for abetting and aiding crime.
Exactly.
Because they invited the police officer to come and drive away the woman because they had closed.
So if we are dealing with the police officer, they actually took the child away so that the policeman will be able to beat the woman more. Those people should be prosecuted as well.
Let's do some of your comments now. This one from Vinci Intema says, Mr. Toma, what about widening the tax debt instead of deepening it? Since you agree with tax increase, we may not have time to answer that, but that's your comment. This one on Facebook says, from Niyama says, when are you bringing on the ladies? Well, myself and the production team would look at that. It's a good observation. Means you've been watching us since it began. But that's how we draw the curtains down on today's edition of Press Conference. My name is Duke Mensopoku. My guests have been Toma Emehia of the Economic Times and consulting editor for Business Executive Magazine. Next to him is Richard Abbey, online editor, Business and Financial Times, and then Elvis Darko, sitting next to me, editor of The Finder. Thank you very much for spending your evening with us, and for you at home for watching. Thank you. This is Press Conference. We'll be back same time next week. Good night.
This is DW News live from Berlin. A shock retirement from the German international soccer team. World Cup winning midfielder Mesut Ozil says he will not pull on a Germany shirt again after facing a barrage of criticism for meeting Turkish President